Hello. I am pleased to welcome you as we enter this episode of the Catholic Guided Prayer Podcast. The main focus of this podcast is to create a prayerful space for listeners to engage in guided prayer. I'm your host, Stephanie Grace, and I'm so glad you're here. Grab a journal and a pen, and let's get started. In this week's episode, we will discuss the origins of the Ignatian form of contemplative prayer. Born in 1491 as young as 13, Ignatius was not afraid of the finer things in life. He lived like this for quite some time, until the age of 30, when he was injured in battle. It was then, while recovering, that he sat with the Gospels and found an interest in Jesus and the lives of the saints. He, along with a few friends, went on to form the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. In 1556, his health would take a turn for the worse, and he would die on July 31st, which would later become his feast day. Saint Ignatius was known to be zealous. He would spend his time teaching others how to pray and preaching about the Gospels. Since Ignatius had yet to be ordained a priest, his zeal got him into some trouble. He was thrown into jail for 42 days by the Inquisition on grounds of suspicious behavior. Luckily for us, his zeal never diminished, and he went on to found many Jesuit colleges around Europe. We will now go on to break down the steps of Ignatian contemplation. These will be the steps that we follow every time we go through this form of prayer. Pre-step. Choose a passage in which Jesus is interacting with someone. Saint Ignatius particularly enjoyed passages from the Gospels, but you can do this even with Old Testament passages where God is interacting with people. Step 1. Ask God for guidance, acknowledging His presence. Begin your time with an opening prayer. Acknowledge God's presence and ask His Spirit to guide you through the exercise. Step 2. Familiarize yourself with the chosen passage by reading it twice. The purpose of reading the passage twice is to get a good picture of what happens in the story. Establishing the setup of the story will help with Step 3. Step 3. Contemplate the scene, inserting yourself within the narrative. After reading the passage twice, it's now time to insert yourself into the story. You can choose to be a character who is already present in the scene, an outside observer, or just yourself. Once you've decided who you'll be, think through the scene again by playing it in your mind. I have difficulty imagining the scene from memory, so I typically listen to someone read the passage while closing my eyes and imagining the scene. We will be using that method in the podcast. Step 4. Engage in a conversation with God about your reflections. After all the imagining and reading, it's time to take a break and talk with God about all that He's revealed to you during your time together. Post-step. Close in prayer. Now that you have a decent idea of how Ignatian contemplation works, feel free to listen to any of the Ignatian contemplations we have here on the podcast. As always, may the Lord bless you and keep you.